There's a road in Texas where people say if something knocks on your car window, you don't stop, you don't look, and you definitely don't follow the lights. Because if you do, it might follow you home. Chapter 1. The Road Back. The highway stretched out in front of Elizabeth like it had no intention of ending. Just a long, sun-bleached ribbon cutting through flat Texas land, shimmering under a sky that felt too big to belong to anyone. Heat rippled off the asphalt in soft waves, bending the horizon into something uncertain, like the world itself wasn't sitting quite right. Elizabeth tightened her grip on the steering wheel. The air conditioner in her car rattled, like it was thinking about quitting, pushing out lukewarm air that smelled faintly of dust. She reached over and turned the dial anyway, more for the noise and the relief. Silence out here felt wrong. Too thick, too expectant. She hadn't been back in years. Not since she was little. Not since summer spent catching fireflies in jars and falling asleep on her grandmother's couch while an old fan hummed in the corner. Back when the roads felt smaller, friendlier. Now, everything felt stretched, emptier, like the land had grown while she was gone. Or maybe it had always been this big, and she just hadn't noticed before. A green highway sign flickered past. San Miguel County line, 2 miles. Elizabeth swallowed, glancing at it in her rear-view mirror until it disappeared. Almost there, she murmured, though there was no one to hear it. The sun had started its slow descent by the time she crossed into the county. The light changed first. It always did out here. What had been bright and harsh softened into something golden, but not warm, not comforting, just dimmer, like someone had turned down the world a notch. Long shadows stretched across the fields, fence posts, scrubby mesquite trees, the occasional sagging barn in the distance. Elizabeth rolled her shoulders, trying to shake off the tightness creeping into her chest. It's just a drive, just the heat, just being back. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, rattling loudly in the quiet car. She jumped, then let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. A text from Matthew reads, "Don't forget not to take Applewhite Road after dark." Elizabeth snorted softly, shaking her head. Her cousin had been telling her this ever since she told him she was planning this trip. When she asked him why, he kept telling her to just don't. Still dramatic, she muttered, but something about the message lingered. Applewhite Road. The name tugged at something in her memory, faint, half-formed, like a dream you forget the second you wake up. She couldn't quite place it, didn't try very hard to. The road narrowed without warning. 1 minute, it was a proper highway. The next it dipped into a 2-lane stretch of cracked asphalt. The painted lines faded almost to nothing. Grass crept in at the edges. The land pressed closer. Elizabeth slowed slightly, eyes scanning the horizon. That's when she saw them. At first, she thought it was just the sun, a reflection, maybe light catching on glass or metal somewhere out in the distance. But the longer she looked, the less it made sense. They weren't fixed. They hovered, small, faint, barely there, little pinpricks of light, low to the ground, flickering against the darkening landscape. Elizabeth squinted, leaning forward slightly in her seat. What is that? There were 3 of them. No, 4. No. One blinked out. Another drifted sideways. Not like a car. Not like anything she could name. A chill slid down her spine, slow and unwelcome. Okay, she said more firmly this time. Nope. Just heat. Mirage. Whatever. She'd heard of stuff like that. Desert illusions. Light bending in weird ways. She forced her gaze back the road. But it didn't last. Her eyes kept pulling back, drawn to the lights like they were magnets, and she was something small and metallic. They flickered again, and this time one of them moved, not drifting, not wavering, moving, deliberate. It slid a few feet to the left, then stopped. Elizabeth's breath caught. A strange, prickling sensation spread across her arms, raising goosebumps despite the heat. Her foot eased off the gas without her telling it to. The car slowed. The hum of the engine dropped, the sound thinning out into the open air. The world seemed to hold its breath with her. The lights pulsed faintly. Once, twice, and then one brightened, just a little, but enough. Enough that she felt it, not saw it, felt it, like the moment someone turns her head, and looks directly at you from across a room, like being noticed. Elizabeth's fingers tightened around the wheel. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "Don't be stupid," she whispered. But her voice came out thinner than she meant it to. The light flickered again. Closer now. No, that wasn't right. It only felt closer. Right? She blinked hard, sitting up straighter. The horizon hadn't changed. The distance was the same. It had to be. The light darted. Quick, sharp, a sudden sideways movement that made her flinch so hard the car drifted toward the shoulder. Jesus! She jerked the wheel, heart slamming as gravel crunched under her tires before she corrected back onto the road. Her breath came fast now. Too fast. The lights dimmed. All of them. As if someone had turned down a switch. And just like that, they were gone. The road stretched out ahead again. Empty. Still. Nothing but fading sunlight and shadow. Elizabeth swallowed hard, forcing a shaky laugh. Okay, cool, great, love that. Her hands were trembling. She flexed her fingers, trying to loosen them. It's fine. You're fine. Long drive, weird light, desert nonsense. She kept talking, kept filling the space, because the silence had come back, and it felt worse now, heavier, like it had moved closer. While she wasn't paying attention, Elizabeth pressed a little harder on the gas. The engine responded with a low growl, the car picking up speed as the last stretch of road curved gently ahead. She didn't look back at the horizon again. Didn't want to, didn't need to, because even without turning her head, she had the strangest, creeping feeling that if she did look, the lights wouldn't be far away anymore. 10 minutes later, the porch light of her grandmother's house came into view, glowing bright against the deepening dusk. Steady, unblinking. Elizabeth let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "There you are," she murmured. Something in her chest loosened at the sight of it. Warm, safe, normal. She pulled into the gravel driveway, the crunch loud and grounding beneath her tires. The house looked the same. Small, weathered, familiar. The porch light hummed softly overhead, casting a wide circle of gold across the yard. Elizabeth turned off the engine. Silence rushed in, but it wasn't the same silence as the road. This one felt held back, kept at bay. She sat there for a moment, hands still resting on the wheel, eyes fixed on the light. Then, without meaning to, she glanced past it, out toward the open land beyond the fence. The horizon had darkened now, the last of the sun slipping away. And for just a second, she thought she saw something. A faint flicker, low to the ground. Small, watching. Elizabeth blinked. It was gone. The porch light buzzed overhead. Steady, bright, waiting. And far beyond the fence line, something in the dark shifted. Just enough to notice. Not enough to understand. Chapter 2. The Bridge Rule. The screen door creaked the same way it always had. A long, tired groan as Elizabeth pushed it open, the sound stretching out into the warm evening air like it didn't want her to forget it. The porch boards dipped slightly under her weight, familiar in a way that made something in her chest ache. "Grandma," she called. Her voice carried softly into the house. For a second, there was no answer. Then, "I'm in the kitchen, sweetheart." Relief washed through her, quick and quiet. Elizabeth stepped inside, the scent hitting her immediately. Coffee, cinnamon, something simmering low and slow on the stove. It wrapped around her like memory, like she'd never left. The kitchen light was bright, brighter than it needed to be. So was the hallway. So was the living room. Every light in the house was on. Elizabeth paused, glancing toward the windows. Outside, dusk had settled into something deeper, the edges of the world softening into shadow. "You expecting company?" Elizabeth asked lightly, stepping into the kitchen. Grandma Mary stood at the stove, stirring a pot with slow, steady movements. She didn't turn right away. No. Elizabeth set her keys down on the counter, brow furrowing. "Then why?" "We don't let the house go dark." The words came simple, matter of fact, like of course. Grandma finally turned, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp, watching Elizabeth a little too closely. Something about that look made the question dry up in Elizabeth's throat. She forced a smile instead. "Right," Okay, anti-ambience. Got it. Grandma didn't smile back. Did you take the highway? Yeah. Good. A beat. Then you didn't take Applewhite Road. It wasn't a question. Elizabeth hesitated, just a fraction too long. Grandma's gaze sharpened. I didn't, Elizabeth said quickly. Why? Matthew texted me about that too. What's the deal with that road? Grandma turned back to the stove. Nothing you need to worry about. That usually means it's exactly something I need to worry about, Elizabeth muttered. Grandma said nothing, just kept stirring. They ate at the small kitchen table, the overhead light casting everything in a steady, unwavering glow. Elizabeth tried to focus on the food. It was good, of course it was good, but her mind kept drifting. Back to the road, back to the lights, back to that feeling. You ever heard of lights out here? She asked casually, picking at her plate. Like weird ones? In the distance, the spoon in Grandma's hand stilled, just for a second. Then it moved again. What kind of lights? She asked. Elizabeth shrugged, trying to sound unimpressed. I don't know. Probably nothing. Just flickering, low to the ground. Grandma didn't look at her. Probably cars. Didn't look like cars. Then you shouldn't look so long next time. The words landed harder than Elizabeth expected. She blinked. Okay. Silence stretched between them, thick, uncomfortable. Elizabeth's phone lit up with a text from Matthew. I'm going to go see Matthew, she said, pushing her chair back. He's outside. Grandma nodded once. Be back inside before it's fully dark. Elizabeth huffed a small laugh. Grandma, I'm not 12. No, Grandma Mary said quietly. You're not. That was it. No argument. No lecture. Somehow that felt worse. Matthew's truck was parked in the driveway, leaned slightly to one side, like it had given up trying to sit straight years ago. He was sitting on the hood when Elizabeth walked up, arms crossed, watching the sky like it might do something interesting if he stared long enough. He looked the same, maybe a little older, a little more tired around the edges, but the same. You always greet people like a mysterious cowboy now, or is this just for me? Matthew snorted, pushing himself off the hood. Figured I'd set the tone. She grinned, but it faded quickly when she noticed the way he was looking at her. Not casual, not relaxed. Checking. You made it in before dark, he said. Barely. What's with you and my travel itinerary? Matthew shoved his hands into his pockets, glancing past her toward the open land beyond the house. Did you see anything on the way in? Elizabeth hesitated. There was again that feeling, like the question mattered more than it should. Maybe, she said. Why? Matthew let out a slow breath through his nose. Lights. She didn't answer right away. Didn't need to. His expression shifted anyway. Yeah, he said quietly. Okay. Elizabeth crossed her arms. Okay, what? You gonna explain, or are we just gonna stand here being cryptic, like it's a personality trait? That got a faint smile out of him. Didn't reach his eyes. They show up sometimes, he said. Out past the fields, near the old roads. Cool. Love that. Super normal. They're not, he said flatly. The humor slipped. Elizabeth studied him. You're serious. Yeah. A beat of silence passed between them. The air cooling as the last of the light drained from the sky. The porch light behind her buzzed louder now. Brighter. Matthew glanced toward it, then back at her. If you see them again, he said, don't follow them. Elizabeth let out a short laugh. I wasn't planning on it. I'm not joking. Something in his tone made her pause. Okay, she said slowly. I won't. Happy. Matthew didn't answer. Instead, he nodded once, like that was one box checked. Then he added, and stay off Applewhite. There's again, she said. What is on Applewhite Road? Matthew's jaw tightened. Nothing good. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Yes. Matthew stepped closer, not aggressive, but enough that she had to look at him directly. When you were driving, he said, voice low, did you hear something hit your car? Elizabeth blinked. Like what? A knock. On the window. Maybe the side of the car. Her stomach dipped just a little. She thought of the empty road, the silence, the way the world had felt like it was holding its breath. "No," she said. Matthew held her gaze for a second longer, then nodded. "Good." He stepped back again, distance returning between them. Elizabeth exhaled, tension she hadn't noticed easing slightly. "Okay, seriously, what is this about?" she asked. "First the lights, now mysterious car knocking? What? Is this some kind of local hazing ritual?" Matthew huffed a quiet laugh. "I wish." The wind shifted, brushing softly through the grass. The sound carried across the open land in a low whisper. Matthew glanced toward the dark beyond the fence, then back at her. "If you're driving," he said, "and something knocks." He hesitated, just for a second, like even saying it out loud felt like a mistake. "You don't stop," he finished. "You don't roll the window down." Elizabeth stared at him. "Okay. And you don't look too long." That one landed differently. She tilted her head. "What happens if I do?" Matthew's expression went still. Not scared, not dramatic, just certain. "It notices," he said. The porch light buzzed. Loud, too loud. Elizabeth forced a laugh, shaking her head. "Okay, yeah, no, that's creepy. You're officially banned from telling stories after sunset." "I'm not telling stories." "Sure you're not." Matthew didn't argue, didn't push. He just looked past her again toward the dark field, stretching out beyond the fence. Elizabeth followed his gaze. The land was empty. Still, nothing but shadow. She opened her mouth to say something, and froze. For just a second, she thought she saw it again. A faint flicker, low to the ground. Gone almost as soon as it appeared. Elizabeth swallowed. "You see that?" she asked quietly. Matthew didn't answer right away. Then, "Yeah." Her pulse ticked up. The air felt heavier now. Closer. "Relax," she said, more to herself than him. "It's probably just..." "Don't..." Matthew cut in. She blinked. "What?" "Don't explain it," he said. "Just don't." That was new. That doesn't even make sense. "I know." The wind shifted again. Cooler now. The porch light flickered just once. Elizabeth's breath caught. The light steadied, but the feeling didn't. Matthew took a step back toward his truck. "I'm heading out," he said. "Already?" "Yeah." "That's it? You show up, freak me out, and leave?" "Pretty much." Elizabeth scoffed, but it came out weaker than she intended. "Wow. Great. Reunion." Matthew opened his truck door, then paused. "Just get inside before it gets fully dark," he said. She crossed her arms. "Yes, sir." He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else, then thought better of it. "Lock the doors," he added instead. And then he was gone. Elizabeth stood there for a moment after his truck disappeared down the road. The night had settled in fully now. Thick, quiet. The porch light hummed behind her, casting long shadows across the yard. She turned slowly, scanning the fence line. Nothing. Just darkness. Empty land. Still, that feeling lingered, like something had almost been there, like it had just stepped back out of sight. Elizabeth shook her head, forcing a breath out. "Get a grip," she muttered. She turned and headed for the house. The porch boards creaked under her feet. The screen door groaned as she pulled it open. And just before she stepped inside, she hesitated, glancing over her shoulder out into the dark. For a split second, she thought she saw it. A faint, distant glow, low to the ground, perfectly still, watching. Inside, the lights were already on, every single one. Chapter 3. The porch light, the house, sounded different at night. Elizabeth noticed it almost immediately. Not louder, not quieter, just aware. The hum of the porch light seeped faintly through the walls, a low electric buzz that never quite settled into the background. The old fan in the living room clicked in uneven rhythms. Pipes shifted somewhere deep in the house with soft, hollow knocks. Everything had a sound. Everything had a presence. Elizabeth lay on her back in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wasn't even pretending to come. She checked her phone. 11:42 p.m. Too early to be this awake. Too late to still feel this restless. She rolled onto her side, pulling the thin sheet up a little higher, though the air was still warm. It's just unfamiliar. That's all. New place. Old house. Weird day. Weird lights. Her jaw tightened slightly. Stop, she whispered to herself. Out loud, it sounded smaller, less convincing. The house creaked. Elizabeth squeezed her eyes shut. Don't start. Don't let your brain do that thing where every sound turns into something else. A few seconds passed. Then a minute. Her breathing slowed just a little. And then, tap. Her eyes opened. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Tap. It was soft, light, almost polite. Elizabeth frowned, pushing herself up onto her elbows. That's just the house, she murmured, with settling. Pipes. Something normal. Something explainable. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, feet brushing against the cool floor. Silence. See? Nothing. She stood, stretching slightly, rolling her shoulders as if she could shake the feeling off. Then, tap, tap, tap. This time it was clearer, closer, not from the walls. From the window. Elizabeth froze. Slowly, very slowly. She turned her head. The window sat just to the right of the bed, the thin curtain pulled halfway across it. The porch light spilled through the fabric in a soft golden wash, illuminating the room just enough to keep the shadows from fully forming. The tapping came again. Tap, right against the glass. Elizabeth swallowed. Her mind moved fast now, scrambling for something reasonable. A branch. It has to be a branch. Except there were no trees that close to the house. The nearest mesquite stood several yards away, its thin limbs barely reaching toward the fence line. Tap, tap. The sound came again. Measured, intentional, not scratching, not brushing, knocking. Her pulse ticked up. You're being ridiculous, she whispered, though her voice had dropped lower, instinctively quiet. She took a step toward the window, then another. The floor creaked softly beneath her weight. The tapping stopped. Of course it did. Elizabeth let out a breath, a nervous laugh slipping out with it. See? Nothing. She reached for the curtain and hesitated. Matthew's voice slipped into her mind. You don't look too long. She rolled her eyes. I'm literally in my own house. Still, her hand hovered there for a second longer than it should have. Then she grabbed the fabric and pulled it aside. Nothing. Just the yard, bathed in the steady glow of the porch light. The fence stretched out in a straight line, casting thin shadows across the dry grass. Beyond it, the land dissolved into darkness, the horizon barely distinguishable from the sky. Empty. Still, Elizabeth exhaled, tension easing slightly. Congratulations, she muttered. You've officially scared yourself over a tree that doesn't exist. She let the curtain fall back into place and turned away. Tap. Elizabeth flinched. The sound came again, louder now. Tap, tap. Her head snapped back toward the window. The curtain shifted slightly, brushing against the glass. The tapping came again. Tap, 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 right where her face had just been. Her stomach dropped. Nope, she said immediately. Nope, absolutely not. She backed away from the window, heart starting to pound now. This is stupid. It's just pressure or temperature or... Tap. Harder. More insistent. Elizabeth's breath quickened. The sound wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It was knocking. 3 times. A pause. Then again. Tap. 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 A pattern. Her skin prickled. No, she whispered. Another set. Tap. 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 Elizabeth took another step back, bumping lightly into the dresser behind her. The room felt smaller now, the air thicker, like something had stepped closer without crossing the threshold. Tap, tap, slower this time, dragging, as if whatever was making the sound was adjusting, learning. Her gaze locked on the curtain, on the faint outline of the window, behind it. The porch light still glowed outside. Steady, bright, safe, right? The tapping stopped. Silence rushed in. Sharp, sudden. Elizabeth waited. Seconds stretched. 10, 20, nothing. Her breathing slowly began to even out. Okay, she whispered. Okay, It's done. It's fine. She pushed off the dresser, forcing herself to move. One step, then another, toward the door this time. Not the window. Definitely not the window. Her hand reached for the doorknob. Just as her fingers brushed the metal, tap. Elizabeth froze. It came from the window again. Soft, almost hesitant. She squeezed her eyes shut. Don't. Just go. Just leave the room. Tap, tap. Quieter now. Not demanding. Not insistent. Almost waiting. Elizabeth's throat tightened. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. Every instinct, the logical, rational, self-preserving part of her, was screaming at her to ignore it, to walk away, to not engage. But curiosity slipped in anyway. Slow, quiet, dangerous. Her eyes opened, and before she could stop herself, she turned back. One step, two. Her hand reached out, hovered over the curtain, just enough to pull it back a little. She froze, because this time there was something there. Not a person, not fully, just a shape, standing too close to the window, close enough that the porch light should have illuminated it clearly. But it didn't. The light bent around it, refused it. All she could make out was a vague outline, tall, uneven, head tilted slightly to one side, and where the face should have been, nothing, just darkness. Elizabeth's breath caught in her throat. Her hand trembled against the curtain. The shape didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. It just stood there, waiting. And then, slowly, it lifted something toward the glass. A hand, maybe. Long wrong. The fingers too thin, too stretched. It pressed lightly against the window, right where her hand rested on the other side. Elizabeth jerked back with a strangled gasp, stumbling away from the window so fast she nearly tripped. Her heart slammed against her ribs. No. Nope. No. The curtain fell back into place. The shape disappeared behind it. The tapping didn't come again. Not immediately. Elizabeth pressed herself against the far wall, shaking now, her breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. The room felt colder. The porch light buzzed louder. Too loud, like it was straining, like it was flickering. Elizabeth's eyes snapped back to the window. The light outside dimmed, just for a second, then brightened again. The curtain swayed slightly, but the shape was gone. Elizabeth didn't sleep, not even a little. Somewhere beyond the fence line, low to the ground, a faint light flickered once. Then again, as if answering something. Chapter 4. Beyond the fence. Morning came like nothing had happened. Sunlight spilled through the curtains in soft, golden stripes. The house creaked gently, settling into the day. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pan clinked lightly against the stove. Normal. Completely, perfectly normal. Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, unmoving. She hadn't slept, not even close. Her eyes burned, her thoughts slow and heavy. But underneath it all, something sharper lingered. Something that hadn't faded with the dark. The memory of the window, the shape, that hand. She swallowed, dragging both hands down her face. Okay, she muttered. Okay, think. Old house. Weird sounds. Your brain filling in blanks. That's all. That had to be all. Because the alternative. Nope, she said quickly, pushing herself to her feet. We're not doing that. She crossed the room, stopping just short of the window. The curtain hung still, quiet, innocent, like it hadn't betrayed her entire sense of reality a few hours ago. Elizabeth stared at it. Then, slowly she reached out and pulled it aside. Nothing, just daylight. The yard stretched out bright and ordinary, the fence line cutting across dry grass that swayed gently in the breeze. The mesquite trees stood where they always had, thin and unremarkable. No shapes, no shadows, no sign that anything had ever been there. Elizabeth let out a long breath. See, she said softly. You're fine. Her voice sounded steadier now, more convincing. She gave herself a small nod and let the curtain fall back into place. Case closed. It didn't feel closed. By late afternoon, the heat had settled in thick and heavy, pressing down on everything like a hand that didn't quite know its own strength. Elizabeth stood on the porch, arms crossed, staring out at the fence line. She hadn't meant to come out here, hadn't meant to stand in this exact spot, but somehow, here she was. The porch light hung above her, silent now in the daylight, harmless, just a bulb in a metal fixture. Nothing special, nothing important. Behind her, she could hear Grandma moving around inside, the steady rhythm of something being chopped, the low murmur of the radio. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Elizabeth's gaze drifted outward, to the field, to the place just beyond the fence, where she thought, no, where she knew she'd seen something last night. You're not seriously thinking about it. She blinked. Matthew's voice. She hadn't even heard his truck pull up. Elizabeth glanced over her shoulder. He was leaning against the porch post now, arms crossed, watching her with that same too-aware expression. How do you do that? She asked. Just appear? Practice, he said. She huffed a quiet laugh, then looked back out at the field. I didn't imagine it, she said. Not a question. Matthew didn't answer right away. Elizabeth felt his eyes on her. You saw something at the window, he said finally. Her stomach tightened. You already knew that. I guess. She turned to face him. It was right there, she said, her voice low, on the other side of the glass. Matthew's jaw shifted slightly. You didn't open the window, he said. Again, not a question. Elizabeth shook her head. I'm not that stupid. Good. A beat. Then you didn't talk to it. She hesitated. No. Matthew nodded once, like that mattered more than anything else she'd said. Then you're fine. Elizabeth let out a sharp breath. Yeah, okay, except I'm not, because that shouldn't have happened at all. Matthew didn't argue, didn't try to explain it away. That somehow made it worse. Elizabeth turned back toward the field, her eyes narrowing slightly. There, she said suddenly. Matthew straightened. What? She stepped forward, pointing just past the fence. The ground, right there. Do you see that? At first, it looked like nothing, just dry grass and dirt. But then, a faint disturbance, like something had pressed into the earth. Not deep, not obvious, but there, a subtle shift in the texture. Matthew went still. Don't, he said. Elizabeth frowned. Don't what? Don't go out there. She glanced at him. I wasn't. She stopped, because she had been. The thought had already been forming, quiet and insistent. Just check. Just a quick look. Just to prove. It's probably nothing, she said, already stepping down off the porch. Elizabeth, I'm not going far. The grass crunched under her shoes as she crossed the yard. The air felt different out here. Heavier, quieter. The sounds in the house faded quickly behind her, swallowed by the open space. Elizabeth, stop. She didn't. The fence loomed closer. A simple thing. With posts and wire. A line. A boundary. She paused just in front of it, her fingers brushing lightly against the top strand. Nothing happened. No sudden chill. No dramatic shift. Just a fence, separating one piece of land from another. See? Fine. Elizabeth stepped over it. The moment her foot hit the other side, something changed. Not visibly, not in a way she could point to, but she felt it. A subtle shift, like stepping into a room where someone had just been talking and stopped the second you walked in. The air stilled. The breeze died. Elizabeth's heartbeat ticked up. Behind her, she heard Matthew swear under his breath. Elizabeth, he called, sharper now. Get back over here. In a second, she said, though her voice had gone quieter. She moved forward slowly, eyes fixed on the ground. The disturbance was clearer up close. Marks, not quite footprints, not quite anything she recognized, just impressions, uneven, like something had pressed down into the dirt and lingered. Elizabeth crouched slightly, studying them. They're fresh, she said. Matthew didn't respond. She glanced back. He hadn't crossed the fence. He stood on the other side, tense, watching her like she'd just stepped onto thin ice. Elizabeth, he said again, come back. She turned back to the marks. Something about them pulled at her. Not curiosity. Not exactly. More like recognition. Like she was looking at something she almost understood. Her hand drifted down, hovering just above the ground. Don't. The thought came quick and sharp. Not her voice. Not quite. Just instinct. Loud. Clear. Wrong. Elizabeth hesitated. Then she touched it. The world didn't explode. The ground didn't open up. Nothing dramatic happened. But the air shifted. A sudden, subtle pressure. Like something had leaned closer. Elizabeth's breath caught. Behind her, Matthew swore again. Elizabeth, get back here now. She pushed herself up quickly, heart starting to race. Okay, she said. Okay, I'm coming. She turned and froze, because the distance between her and the fence felt longer. Not by much. Just enough. Enough that it didn't feel right. Enough that her stomach dropped. Matthew, he was still there. Same place. Same distance. Wasn't he? Elizabeth, he said, slower now. Walk back. Don't run. I'm not. Something flickered, off to her left, low to the ground. Elizabeth's head snapped toward it. A small light, faint, hovering just above the dirt. Her breath caught. No, she whispered. Another flicker, to her right. Then another, behind her. The lights, closer than before, much closer. Elizabeth, Matthew said, voice tight, don't look at them. Too late. They pulsed softly. Once, twice, and then they moved, not drifting, not wandering, circling, slow, deliberate, closing in. Elizabeth's chest tightened. They're not supposed to be this close, she said. Matthew didn't answer. Matthew, walk, back. She swallowed hard, forcing her legs to move. One step, then another. The lights shifted with her, keeping distance, keeping pace. Hurting. The fence felt too far away, the space between her and safety stretching with every step. Matthew, I'm right here, he said quickly. Just keep coming. The lights pulsed again. Closer now. One drifted forward just enough that she could see it clearly. Not solid, not fully there. Just a glow, soft at the edges, wrong at the center. Elizabeth's breath hitched. What are they? Matthew didn't answer. Matthew, they're not just lights, he said. That was not helpful. At all. Elizabeth picked up her pace. The fence finally loomed close enough to touch. She grabbed the top wire, heart pounding, and climbed over. The second her foot hit the yard, the pressure vanished. The air moved again. Sound rushed back in. The light stopped, hovering just beyond the fence. Perfectly still, watching. Elizabeth stumbled back, breathing hard. Oh, my God! Matthew grabbed her arm, pulling her a few steps farther from the fence. I told you not to go out there. I didn't think. Yeah, he said, that's the problem. Elizabeth dragged a hand through her hair, shaking. They followed me, she said. They were moving. Matthew glanced toward the fence. The lights flickered. Faint now, distant again, like they'd never been close at all. They don't like the light, he said quietly. Elizabeth followed his gaze back to the porch. The bulb still hung there, silent in the daylight, waiting. They stopped at the fence, she said. For now. That didn't sound reassuring. All. Elizabeth wrapped her arms around herself, staring out at the field, at the place she'd just been standing, at the marks in the dirt that already looked less distinct, fading, like they hadn't been there long, or like they didn't stay. Matthew, she said slowly. Yeah. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. They wanted me out there. Matthew didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, the porch light came on early, and far beyond the fence line, the lights gathered, closer than before, waiting. Chapter 5. The Pattern. The porch light came on before the sun was fully gone. Elizabeth noticed. Of course she noticed. She was watching for it, watching everything now. The second the light flickered to life, a low hum filled the air, steady, constant, like a hell breath that never quite released. She stood just inside the front door, arms wrapped tight around herself, eyes fixed on the window. Beyond the glass, the yard glowed in that familiar wash of gold. Safe, contained, held back for now. You're staring again. Elizabeth jumped, spinning toward the voice. Matthew stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall like he'd been there a while. "How long have you been doing that?" she asked. "Long enough," she huffed, turning back toward the window. "I just want to know what they are." Matthew pushed off the wall, stepping closer, but not too close to the door. "You don't," he said. "That's not helpful. It's not supposed to be." Elizabeth crossed her arms tighter. "They followed me," she said. "They herded me. I know. You know?" She turned to him sharply. "And you didn't think to mention that part earlier?" Matthew's expression didn't change. "You wouldn't have listened." "Okay, rude. Accurate, but rude." Elizabeth opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, because he wasn't wrong. She exhaled sharply, scrubbing a hand down her face. "Okay," she said. "Fine. Great. So what now?" "I just stay inside forever and hope the creepy floating lights get bored." Matthew didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced toward the window, toward the yard. The light hummed, steady, unwavering. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Elizabeth frowned. "Hear what?" He tilted his head slightly. "Listen." She did. At first, there was nothing but the usual faint buzz of the porch light, the distant whisper of wind through dry grass, the soft tick of the old clock in the living room. Normal sounds. Then, oh! It was faint, so faint she almost missed it. A soft tapping. Irregular. Out of sync. Not from the window this time. Not from the walls. From the door. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. "No," she said immediately. "No, absolutely not." Tap. It came again. Light. Careful. Almost polite. Matthew didn't move. Didn't react. Like this was expected. Like this was already happening whether they acknowledged it or not. "They can't come in," he said quietly. Elizabeth let out a shaky laugh. "Cool. Great. Then why are they knocking?" Matthew didn't answer. The tapping came again. Tap, tap, then a pause. Elizabeth held her breath, waiting, and then tap, 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 3 in a row. Her chest tightened. "That's the same pattern," she whispered. Matthew nodded once. They learned fast. That was not comforting at all. The tapping stopped. Silence rushed in. Heavy, expectant. Elizabeth stared at the door like it might open on its own. "It's fine," she said quietly. "It's just whatever it is, it's outside. It can't." Knock. Louder this time. Not tapping. Knocking. Elizabeth flinched hard. "Okay, nope. Nope, I hate that." Matthew stepped closer now, positioning himself just slightly in front of her. "Don't open it," he said. "I wasn't going to." Another knock. 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 Slower. More deliberate. The wood of the door trembled faintly with the impact. Elizabeth's pulse roared in her ears. "Who would even?" she started, then stopped herself. "Don't ask that. Don't give it shape." The silence stretched again. Longer this time. And just when Elizabeth hoped it might be over, a voice came from the other side of the door. Soft. Faint. Elizabeth. Her blood ran cold. "No. That wasn't. No. Did you hear that?" she whispered. Matthew didn't answer. Didn't need to. His posture had gone rigid. The voice came again. Clearer this time. "Elizabeth, it's me." Her throat tightened, because she knew that voice. She knew it in a way that hit deeper than logic, deeper than fear. "Mom," she breathed. The word slipped out before she could stop it. Matthew turned sharply toward her. No, but it was too late. The voice outside the door shifted. Warmer now. Relieved. "Yes, sweetheart," it said softly. "Open the door." Elizabeth's vision blurred for a second. Her chest ached. That voice. It sounded exactly like her. Not close. Not similar. Exact. Same tone. Same cadence. Same little softness at the end of each word. It was her mother. It had to be. "You don't open that door," Matthew said, low and firm. Elizabeth took a step forward without meaning to. But what if? "It's not her." "How do you know?" "Because she wouldn't be out there." The words hit hard. Too hard. Elizabeth flinched. "Outside." The voice shifted again. Less patient now. "Elizabeth," it called. "Please." Her hand moved toward the doorknob. Slow. Unsteady. Matthew grabbed her wrist. Don't. But what if it's not her? You don't know that. I do. The voice outside softened again. You left me, it said. Elizabeth's breath hitched. That's not fair, she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. That's not. You left me, the voice repeated. And now you won't even let me in? Her chest tightened painfully. That guilt, that sharp, familiar ache twisted inside her, pulling her forward. Her hand trembled in Matthew's grip. I just need to check, she said, her voice breaking. Just for a second. No, Matthew said. The voice outside changed. Not louder, not angrier, just closer. Elizabeth, right against the door now, right on the other side. You know it's me. Her heart pounded. Her fingers brushed the doorknob. Cold metal. Solid. Real. If you open that door, Matthew said quietly, it won't be her that walks in. The words cut through the fog. Sharp. Clear. Elizabeth froze. The voice outside went still. For a second, it said nothing. And then it laughed. Soft. Wrong. Not her mother's laugh. Not even close. Elizabeth yanked her hand back like she'd been burned. Nope, she said, backing away. Nope, absolutely not. We're done here. The thing outside the door knocked again. Harder. Faster. Knock. 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 The pattern was gone now. No rhythm. No politeness. Just force. The door rattled slightly in its frame. Elizabeth stumbled back another step, her heart racing. It knows, she said. It knows I almost. I know. The knocking stopped. Abrupt, total silence. Elizabeth stared at the door, chest heaving. Waiting. Seconds passed. Then nothing. No voice. No sound. No movement. Matthew didn't relax. Didn't move. He just stood there, watching, listening. After a long moment, he exhaled slowly. It's gone, he said. Elizabeth shook her head, still staring at the door. No, she whispered. It's not. Outside, the porch light flickered. Once, twice, then steadied again. Far beyond the fence line, the lights pulsed brighter than before. Closer, and this time they moved together, not scattered, not drifting, but forming something. A pattern. Chapter 6. What the light keeps out. The house didn't settle after the knocking stopped. It held, like it was waiting to see what they would do next. Elizabeth stood frozen in the middle of the living room, eyes locked on the front door, half expecting it to shudder again, half expecting that voice to slip back through the cracks. It didn't, but the silence was a relief. It was listening. You almost opened it. Matthew's voice was quiet, but it cut clean. Elizabeth swallowed hard, dragging her gaze away from the door. I didn't, she said. You almost did. That stung, because it was true. She wrapped her arms around herself tighter. It sounded like her, she said, softer now. Exactly like her. Matthew didn't argue. That's what it does. It. Not they. Not the lights. Elizabeth caught that. What is it? She asked. Matthew hesitated, and for the first time in their lives, he looked unsure. I don't think it's just one thing, he said. I think you're both talking around it. Grandma Mary's voice came from the kitchen. Calm, steady, certain. Elizabeth turned. Grandma stood in the doorway, dry her hand slowly on a towel, her expression unreadable, but her eyes sharper than ever. You heard that? Elizabeth asked. I heard enough. Grandma stepped into the room, her gaze flicking once toward the front door, then to windows, then finally to Elizabeth. You stepped beyond the fence, she said. Not a question. Elizabeth hesitated. Yeah. Grandma nodded once. That's why I came closer. A chill slid down Elizabeth's spine. It followed me, she said. The lights, they are not the ones you should be worried about. That stopped her. What? Grandma folded the towel neatly over the back of a chair. The lights are only what you see, she said, not what is seeing you. Okay, that was not comforting. At all. Elizabeth glanced at Matthew. He didn't look surprised. That was somehow worse. Then what is seeing me? Elizabeth asked. Grandma didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the front door. Close, but not too close. Her hand hovered near the wood, not touching. Something old, she said finally. Something that learned a long time ago how to call people closer. Elizabeth's stomach tightened. With voices? She asked. With whatever works. The memory of her mother's voice twisted sharp in her chest. That's not fair, she muttered. Grandma's gaze softened, just slightly. No, she said. It isn't. Silence settled again. Heavier this time. More real. Elizabeth shifted her weight, her mind racing. The lights, she said. They were hurting me, like they were trying to push me somewhere. Grandma nodded. Yes. Where? A pause. Then, closer. Cool. Great. Love that. Super specific. Elizabeth exhaled sharply. That's not an answer. It is the only one that matters. Elizabeth pressed her lips together, frustration bubbling up. Okay, then what about the fence? She asked. They stopped at the fence. Why? Grandma's eyes flicked toward the porch, toward the light. They do not like the light, she said. Matthew shifted slightly. That's what I told her. Grandma nodded once. But not all light, she added. Elizabeth frowned. What does that mean? Grandma looked at her. Really looked this time. The light must be kept, she said. Not just turned on. Elizabeth blinked. What? If the house goes dark, Grandma continued, there is nothing to hold them back. A slow, creeping unease settled in Elizabeth's chest. She glanced around the room. Every light still burned. Bright. Steady. You leave them on all night, she said. Yes. Every night. Yes. That's not normal. No, Grandma Mary agreed. It is not. Elizabeth let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. Okay, so what? You think a porch light is keeping whatever that is out of the house? Grandma's expression didn't change. I know it does. That shut her up. Completely. Elizabeth swallowed, her gaze drifting back to the door, to the place where... Nope, not thinking about that again. Not right now. So what happens if it goes out? She asked. Matthew let out a quiet breath. Don't ask that. Too late. Grandma Mary answered anyway. It comes closer. Elizabeth's throat went dry. Closer than knocking? Cool. She dragged a hand through her hair, pacing now. Okay, so what? We just keep the lights on and it just stays out there forever? Grandma Mary didn't respond immediately, which was never a good sign. Grandma? The older woman's gaze shifted to the window, toward the yard beyond. It has already come closer, she said. Elizabeth stopped pacing. The words settled heavy in the room. You saw it at the window, Grandma Mary continued. You heard it at the door. Elizabeth's chest tightened. Yeah, that is closer. Not helpful. Not comforting. Not okay. Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. So what do we do? She asked. Finally, the question that mattered. Grandma Mary looked at her. Long measured. You do not answer it, she said. Elizabeth nodded quickly. Okay, done. Easy. You do not follow the lights. Also done. Learn that one the hard way. You do not go beyond the fence after dark. Elizabeth hesitated. After dark? Grandma's gaze sharpened. Or at all, if you are wise. Right. Okay. Fair. Elizabeth nodded again. Got it. Grandma Mary held her gaze a moment longer. You do not let it learn you. Elizabeth frowned. What does that mean? Grandma didn't answer right away. And suddenly, Elizabeth wasn't sure she wanted her to. What does that mean? She asked again, quieter now. Grandma stepped closer, not threatening, not harsh, but serious in a way that made Elizabeth's stomach twist. It knows your voice now, she said. It knows your grief. Elizabeth's chest tightened painfully. It used your mother, Grandma continued. Next time, it will not need to try so hard. A cold wave of understanding washed over her. No, Elizabeth said immediately. No, I won't fall for that again. Grandma's expression didn't soften. It does not need you to fall for the same thing twice. That was worse. Much worse. Elizabeth shook her head, backing up a step. Okay, no, that's not helpful. It is the truth. I don't want the truth. I want a solution. The words came out sharper than she meant. The room went quiet. Even the hum of the porch light seemed to dip for a second. Grandma studied her. Then, gently, "The light is a solution," she said. Elizabeth let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "That's it? Just light?" Grandma Mary nodded. "For now." Elizabeth closed her eyes briefly. Of course it wasn't that simple. Nothing about this was. A faint flicker of movement caught her attention. Her eyes snapped open. The window, the yard beyond it. For just a second, she thought she saw something shift near the fence line. A glow, low, watching. She stiffened. "They're still out there," she whispered. Matthew followed her gaze. "Yeah," he said. The porch light hummed. Steady, bright, holding. But the darkness beyond it felt thicker now. Closer, like it was pressing in, testing the edges. Waiting. Grandma turned back toward the kitchen. "They will wait," she said simply. Elizabeth swallowed. "For what?" Grandma didn't look back. "For you to make a mistake. That night, the lights didn't drift. They didn't wander. They stayed, clustered just beyond the fence line, perfectly still, perfectly patient. And once, just once, the porch light flickered, long enough to notice. Chapter 7. Applewhite Road. The porch light flickered again at 2:13 a.m. Elizabeth knew the exact time, because she hadn't slept. Again, she lay curled on the couch this time, a blanket pulled up to her chin, eyes fixed on a window like if she looked away. Even for a second, something would take that as permission. The house hummed. The light buzzed. Everything held. Until it didn't. Flick. Dark. Elizabeth shot upright. No. No, no, no. Before the panic could fully take hold. Flick. The light came back. Steady. Bright. Like nothing had happened. But Elizabeth's heart didn't settle. Because it hadn't been a quick flicker. It had lingered. Just long enough. Long enough for something to notice. She wasn't sure what woke her fully. The light. The silence. Or the feeling. That same awful, crawling awareness from a night before. Like someone standing just behind you. Close enough to breathe. Not touching. Just waiting. Elizabeth turned her head slowly toward the window. The yard was lit. The fence stood still. Everything looked the same. Except the lights. They weren't scattered anymore. They weren't drifting. They were closer. Right up against the fence line. Hovering just beyond it. Perfectly still. Her breath caught. No. One pulsed. Soft. Slow. Then another. Like a signal. Like a response. And then they shifted. Not away. Not randomly. Together. Sliding along the fence line. Moving. Following something. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. "What are you doing?" The lights continued. Gliding in a slow, deliberate path. Toward the road. Toward Applewhite Road. The name surfaced in her mind like something pulled up from deep water. Matthew's voice followed right behind it. "Stay off Applewhite." Her pulse quickened. The lights reached the far edge of the fence. And stopped. Waiting. Elizabeth sat frozen. Her thoughts tangled. Loud. Confused. Don't even think about it. Go back to bed. Ignore it. Stay inside. Follow the rules. Her gaze drifted back to window. The lights pulsed again. Softer this time. Almost inviting. Like they weren't hurting now. Not pushing. Elizabeth exhaled slowly. "They're not trying to scare me," she whispered. That realization settled wrong. Heavy. "They're trying to get me to follow." The silence didn't argue. Didn't correct her. Because she was right. And for some reason, that felt worse. 5 minutes later, she was grabbing her keys. "This is stupid," she whispered as she slipped her shoes on by the door. "So stupid. Congratulations. You've officially become the person who dies first in the horror movie." She paused, hand hovering over the lock. Behind her, the house hummed. Safe, bright. In front of her, the door. Darkness on the other side. Waiting. Elizabeth closed her eyes briefly. "I'm just going to look," she said, "from the road. That's it. I'm not getting out of the car. I'm not crossing anything. I'm just looking. There it was. The lie that makes everything worse. She unlocked the door. The night air hit her immediately. Cooler now. Too still. The porch light buzzed overhead as she stepped out, casting that same golden circle around her. The yard looked smaller at night, the fence closer, the darkness beyond it deeper. The lights were gone from the fence line, but she knew where they'd gone. She could feel it, like a thread pulling gently at her chest, toward Applewhite Road. Elizabeth locked the door behind her. Her car sat in the driveway, quiet and waiting. She climbed in quickly, shutting the door with a little more force than necessary. The engine turned over with a low rumble. Too loud, too sudden. She winced. "Relax," she muttered. "It's fine. You're fine." The headlights cut through the dark as she pulled out onto the road. For a moment, everything felt normal, just a quiet Texas night. Then the road curved, and the darkness thickened. Applewhite Road didn't look like much. Just another narrow stretch of asphalt, cracked and worn, the edges swallowed by overgrown grass and low-hanging branches. But the second Elizabeth turned onto it, she felt it. That shift, the same one from beyond the fence, only stronger, like the air itself had weight, like something had been waiting specifically for this. "Okay," she whispered. "That's not great." Her headlights stretched ahead, illuminating just enough of the road to keep her moving. Everything beyond that was shadow. Elizabeth gripped the wheel tighter. "Just drive," she said. "You look, and then you leave. That's it." The road dipped slightly, curved again. The trees pressed closer here, their thin branches scratching faintly at the edges of the light. Then she saw them, the lights floating ahead, low and faint, right in the middle of the road. Elizabeth slowed. "There you are." They didn't scatter, didn't move away. They hovered, waiting. Her heart pounded. This was it. This was what they wanted. She eased her foot off the gas. The car rolled forward slowly, closer and closer. The lights pulsed. Once, twice, and then they drifted aside. Not away, just enough to clear the road, like they were making space, inviting her through. Elizabeth swallowed hard. "No," she whispered. That was wrong. That was very wrong. She should turn around. She should leave. Right now. "Knock!" Elizabeth screamed. The sound came from her right. Sharp, sudden, right against the passenger window. Her head snapped toward it. Nothing. Just darkness. Her breath came fast. Too fast. "No!" Knock. Again. Same spot. Same force. Elizabeth gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Matthew's voice crashed into her thoughts. "If something knocks, you don't stop." "I know," she gasped. I know. Her foot hovered over the brake. Every instinct screamed at her to slam it, to look. But she didn't. You don't roll the window down. You don't look too long. Too late. Her eyes flicked sideways just for a second, and she saw it. A shape running alongside the car. Too fast. Too close. Just beyond the edge of the headlights. Keeping pace. Her breath caught. "No!" "Knock! Knock! Knock!" Faster now. Harder. The car rattled slightly with the force. "Stop it!" she shouted, panic breaking through. The lights ahead pulsed brighter, calling, drawing her forward. The road stretched on, endless. The shape kept pace. Right there, right beside her. And then it leaned closer, toward the window, toward her. Elizabeth saw it, just for a second. Burned skin, twisted and melted, and eyes too wide, too bright. Her scream tore out her throat as she slammed her foot on the gas. The engine roared. The car lurched forward. The knocking stopped instantly. Silence. The shape vanished, gone like it had never been there. Elizabeth didn't slow down, didn't look back, didn't breathe, not until the road spit her back out onto the main stretch where the air felt lighter, where the darkness pulled back, where the world felt normal again. She didn't remember the drive back, didn't remember pulling into the driveway. Only the porch light, bright, steady, waiting. She stumbled out of the car, slamming the door behind her, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped her keys. "Okay," she gasped. "Okay, never again." Her voice broke off because the porch light flickered. Once, twice, longer this time. Too long. Elizabeth's heart stopped. "Don't," she whispered. The light dimmed almost out, then surged back to full brightness. The hum roared louder than ever. Elizabeth stood frozen in its glow, chest heaving. Behind her, the darkness stretched, deep, endless, and for just a second, she thought she heard it. Soft, right at the edge of the light. Tap, tap, tap. Chapter 8. The Bridge Doesn't Forget. Elizabeth didn't sleep, not even close. She sat on the couch until the skies started to lighten, knees pulled tight to her chest, eyes locked on the window like it might blink if she stopped watching. The porch light never went out again. Not once. It hummed, steady, loud, like it was working overtime, like it was tired, like it knew something Elizabeth didn't, or maybe like it knew exactly what followed her home. The knocking hadn't come back. Not on the window, not on the walls, not anywhere. And somehow that felt worse, because it meant something had changed. By morning, Elizabeth felt hollowed out, like the fear had burned through everything and left nothing but nerves and exhaustion behind. The sun didn't help. It made everything look normal. Too normal. The quiet stretch of land beyond it. Even the place where the lights had been. Empty. Still, like it had all been a dream. But Elizabeth's hands still shook, and she knew dreams didn't knock. "You went out there." Elizabeth flinched. Grandma Mary stood in the doorway to the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes sharp as broken glass. Not angry. Not exactly. Something worse. Certain. Elizabeth swallowed. "I just drove. I didn't." "You went to the road." Not a question. A statement. A verdict. Elizabeth looked away. "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Heavy. Then Grandma exhaled slowly, rubbing her temples like she suddenly felt much older than she looked. "Did it knock?" Elizabeth's throat tightened. "Yes." Grandma closed her eyes. Just for a moment, like she'd hoped, foolishly, that the answer might be different this time. "It ran beside you, didn't it?" Elizabeth's breath hitched. "You've seen it." Grandma didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. "Careful. I've seen what's left." A chill crawled up Elizabeth's spine. "What does that mean?" Grandma opened her eyes again, fixing Elizabeth with a look that pinned her in place. "It means you were not supposed to let it see you." The words settled hard. Cold. "What do you mean, see me?" Elizabeth asked. "It was chasing me. Of course it saw me." Grandma shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "Before it only saw movement, sound, heat. It followed patterns, habits." Her gaze drifted briefly toward the window, toward the road. "But now," she continued softly, "it has looked at you." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. "That's worse, right?" Grandma didn't answer. She didn't have to. A knock came at the front door. Both of them froze. Elizabeth's heart leapt into her throat. "No," she whispered. "No, no." "It's daytime," Grandma said firmly, though her voice carried a thin edge of uncertainty. "It doesn't." Knock. Again. Normal. Solid. Human. Grandma moved first, crossing the room with measured steps. Elizabeth stayed rooted where she was, every instinct screaming at her to run the other way. Grandma opened the door. Matthew stood on the porch. Elizabeth almost cried. "You look like hell," Matthew said gently as he stepped inside. Elizabeth let out a shaky laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Yeah, well, I had a rough night." Matthew's eyes flicked toward Grandma. She gave a small, tight nod. He went still. "You went out there," he said. Elizabeth groaned, dragging her hands down her face. "Can everyone stop saying that like I committed a crime?" "You did," Matthew snapped. The sharpness in his voice cut through her exhaustion. She looked up, startled. "I didn't know it was that serious." "I told you not to go," he shot back. "I told you exactly what would happen if you did." "You told me not to stop," Elizabeth interrupted, anger sparking now. "I didn't stop. I followed the rules." Matthew stared at her. Something in his expression shifted. Not relief, not even frustration. Something closer to dread. Did you look at it? Elizabeth hesitated, just for a second too long. Matthew swore under his breath. Elizabeth? It was right there, she snapped. What was I supposed to do? Just pretend it wasn't? That's exactly what you were supposed to do. Silence crashed down. Heavy, breathing, tense. Then Matthew stepped back slightly, running a hand through his hair, trying to steady himself. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, we deal with it. We just deal with it. Elizabeth blinked at him. Deal with what? Matthew looked at Grandma Mary. She didn't look away this time. Didn't soften it. Take her to the bridge, she said. Elizabeth stared at her. What? Matthew's head snapped toward Grandma. No. Yes. No. That's the worst thing we could do. It is the only thing we can do. Elizabeth looked between them, heart pounding again. Can someone please explain what's happening? Grandma stepped closer, her voice low but steady. The bridge is where it belongs. Elizabeth swallowed. Okay. And now, Grandma continued, it is a step beyond it. A cold realization crept in. Because of me. Neither of them argued. If it has marked you, Grandma said, it will follow. Elizabeth's chest tightened. Follow me where? Grandma held her gaze. Anywhere the light does not reach. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Elizabeth shook her head slightly. No. No, that's no. I came back. It didn't follow me. Matthew let out a humorless breath. You don't know that. Elizabeth turned to him. I didn't hear anything. There was no knocking. Nothing. That's not better, Matthew said quietly. That stopped her. What do you mean? Matthew's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the daylight. It only knocks when it wants in. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. The bridge, Grandma said again. Before nightfall. Matthew shook his head. And what? We just walk up and tell her to go home. No, Grandma said. Her voice didn't waver. We're reminded. Elizabeth stared at her. Reminded of what? Grandma's gaze hardened. Of what it is. The room felt colder suddenly. Smaller, like the walls had leaned in just a little. Elizabeth let out a slow breath. And if that doesn't work? Grandma didn't hesitate. Then it will not be the bridge that keeps it anymore. A pause. Just long enough. For then, she added softly, it will be you. Elizabeth's heart stuttered. No, she whispered. No one corrected her. Outside, far beyond the fence, something flickered. Faint, barely there. But in the daylight, that made it worse. Because the lights weren't supposed to show in the sun. And yet one did. Watching. Waiting. Chapter 9. What the Light Can't Touch. They left just after noon because Grandma Mary insisted. Before the sun starts to fall, she said. After that, it becomes something else. Elizabeth didn't ask what something else meant. She didn't want to know. The truck ride was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of everything no one wants to say out loud. Elizabeth sat in the passenger seat, fingers twisting together in her lap. Matthew drove, knuckles tight on the wheel, eyes forward. Not once did he turn on the radio. Not once did he crack a joke. That scared her more than anything. The road stretched out ahead, sun-bleached and ordinary, fields and fences, heat rippling off the asphalt. Everything looked fine, normal, safe. Elizabeth almost laughed. Feel stupid in the daytime, she said quietly, like we're overreacting. Matthew didn't answer. That was answer enough. They turned onto Applewhite Road. And just like that, the world shifted again. Elizabeth felt it immediately. That pressure, that weight in the air. Subtle, but undeniable. You feel that, right? She asked. Matthew nodded once. Yeah. His voice was tight. Daylight doesn't stop it, he added. It just keeps it quieter. Elizabeth swallowed. That's comforting. It shouldn't be. The trees crept closer as they drove, branches arching overhead in places, casting thin, uneven shadows across the road. The sunlight looked thinner here, weaker, like it had to fight to reach the ground. Elizabeth stared out the window. Everything looked still, too still. No birds, no movement. Just heat and silence. There, Matthew said. Elizabeth followed his gaze. The bridge came into view slowly. Not dramatic, not grand. Just an old concrete crossing over a dry creek bed, worn down by time and neglect. If you didn't know, you'd miss it. Drive right past without a second thought. But Elizabeth knew, and now she couldn't look away. Matthew pulled the truck to a stop a few yards before the bridge. The engine idled. Neither of them moved. "We're really doing this," Elizabeth whispered. Matthew nodded. "Yeah." "A beat. Stay close," he added. "And whatever happens, don't wander." Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. "Trust me, wandering is officially off my list of hobbies." They stepped out into the heat. The air felt heavier here. Thicker, like it didn't want to be disturbed. The bridge stretched ahead of them. Short, simple, wrong. Elizabeth couldn't explain it, but something about it felt off. Like looking at a picture that had one detail just slightly out of place. Enough to bother you, not enough to explain. "Don't step onto it yet," Matthew said. Elizabeth froze mid-step. "Okay." He moved ahead of her, stopping just before the edge of the bridge. His shoulders were tense. Every line of his body coiled. "Ready for what?" Elizabeth asked softly. Matthew didn't look back. For it to notice. Silence. Heavy. Waiting. Elizabeth's heartbeat filled her ears. The sun pressed down on them, hot and relentless. And for a moment, nothing happened. Then a flicker. Elizabeth's breath caught. "Do you see that?" Matthew nodded slightly. "Yeah." At the far end of the bridge, just above the railing, a faint light blinked. Once. Gone. Then again a little brighter. "It's not supposed to show during the day," Elizabeth whispered. Matthew's jaw tightened. "I know." Another light flickered, then another. Scattered at first, then gathering, like fireflies. Except they didn't move like anything alive. They hovered, watched, waited. "It knows we're here," Elizabeth said. Matthew exhaled slowly. "Yeah." The air shifted. Not wind, not sound. Just a change, like the world had taken a breath and hadn't let it out. "Okay," Matthew said quietly. "We go together." Elizabeth nodded, even though her legs suddenly felt like they didn't belong to her. "Together," she echoed. They stepped onto the bridge. The temperature dropped instantly. Not cold, but cooler, enough to notice. Enough to feel wrong under the blazing sun. Elizabeth's skin prickled. Her breath fogged faintly in front of her. "That's not normal," she whispered. "No," Matthew said. "It's not." They moved slowly, step by step. The lights drifted closer, circling, not touching, not yet. Halfway across, Elizabeth felt it, that same presence from the night before. Only now, it wasn't behind her. It was everywhere. "Don't look around too fast," Matthew murmured. "Why?" "Because it likes that." Elizabeth clenched her jaw. "Of course it does." The lights pulsed closer, brighter, and then a sound, soft, dragging, from below the bridge. Elizabeth froze. "Did you hear that?" Matthew didn't answer, because he had. The sound came again, slow, wet, like something pulling itself across dry earth. Elizabeth's stomach twisted. "Matthew." "I know," he said quickly. "Just don't." Too late. Elizabeth looked down into the creek bed. At first, nothing. Just dirt, rocks, and shadows. Then movement. Something shifted beneath the bridge, just out of full view. A shape, low to the ground, dragging itself forward. Elizabeth's breath hitched. No. It crawled into the light, and Elizabeth saw it. Burned skin, blackened, split, like it had never healed right. Arms too long. Fingers digging into the dirt as it pulled itself forward. Not walking, not standing. Crawling, its head tilted up slowly. Too slowly. Until those eyes locked onto hers. Bright, wide, knowing. Elizabeth couldn't breathe. It recognized her. "It remembers you," Matthew whispered. The thing's mouth stretched open. Too far, too wide. A sound slipped out. Not quite a scream. Not quite a laugh. Something in between. Something broken. The light surged, swirling faster now, closing in. Now, Matthew said sharply, "Say it." Elizabeth tore her gaze away, heart slamming against her ribs. "Say what?" Matthew grabbed her wrist, pulling her attention back to him. "Tell it what it is." The thing began to climb up the side of the bridge, dragging itself closer, faster now. "It belongs here," Matthew shouted. "Say it." Elizabeth shook her head wildly. "What does that even mean?" The creature's fingers curled over the edge of the bridge. "Closer, closer." "It does not follow," Matthew yelled. "It does not follow." Elizabeth screamed back, her voice cracking. The lights flared. The creature froze. For a split second, everything stopped. Then it screamed, a sound so sharp, so violent, it felt like it split the air itself. The lights scattered wildly, breaking apart, flickering out. One by one, the creature recoiled, its grip slipping, its body jerking backward, like something was pulling it down. "Again!" Matthew shouted. "It does not follow." Elizabeth screamed. The creature shrieked again, louder, angrier, and then it fell, gone, vanishing back into the darkness beneath the bridge. The sound of it hitting the ground echoed up, then silence. The air rushed back in, warm, heavy, normal. The lights were gone, completely. Elizabeth staggered, grabbing the railing to keep herself upright. Her whole body shook. "Is it gone?" Matthew didn't answer right away. He stared down into the creek bed, waiting, listening. After a long moment, he exhaled. "For now." Elizabeth let out a shaky, broken laugh. "I hate that answer." "Yeah," Matthew said quietly. "Me too." They stepped off the bridge together, back into the sunlight, back into the heat, back into a world that suddenly felt too thin to hold what they had just seen. Elizabeth glanced back once. Just once. The bridge sat there, still, silent, empty. But as she turned away, she could have sworn, just for a second, she saw something move beneath it. Chapter 10. It Still Knows the Way Home. The house felt different that night. Not louder, not darker, just aware. Elizabeth stood in the kitchen, staring out at the fence line as the last light of day bled out of the sky. The sun dipped low, shadows stretched, and that thin, fragile sense of safety went with it. "It should be done," Matthew said from behind her. "Should." Elizabeth latched onto the word immediately. "You don't sound convinced." Matthew leaned against the counter, arms crossed tight. "I've never seen anyone bring it back from that," he admitted. "Usually." He trailed off. Elizabeth turned slowly. "Usually what?" Matthew hesitated. "They don't come back at all." "Cool. Great. Love that." Elizabeth let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Fantastic. So I'm the exception." Matthew didn't smile. "That's what worries me." From the living room, Grandma Mary's voice cut in. "You are not an exception." Both of them turned. She stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "You are a thread," she said. Elizabeth blinked. "A what?" Grandma stepped closer, her gaze steady. "It followed you because you looked at it," she said. "You gave it shape, recognition." A chill crept through Elizabeth's chest. "But you sent it back," Matthew argued. "We both did." Grandma shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "You reminded it where it belongs." A pause. That is not the same as ending it. Silence settled over the room. Heavy, uncomfortable, real. Elizabeth turned back toward the window. The fence line stretched quiet in the fading light. Nothing moved. Nothing flickered. Nothing waited. "So what happens now?" she asked softly. Grandma didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter than Elizabeth had ever heard it. "Now we see if it listens." Night fell. The porch light clicked on with a soft hum. Steady, golden, familiar. Elizabeth sat on the couch again, blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. Same spot, same view, same house. But nothing felt the same. The clock ticked. 9:12, 10:23, 11:47. Nothing happened. By midnight, Elizabeth's body started to relax. Just a little. Her shoulders dropped. Her breathing evened out. "Maybe," she whispered. Matthew, sitting across from her, didn't respond, but he shifted slightly. Less tense, less ready to. 12:36 a.m. The porch light flickered. Elizabeth's heart stopped. Matthew straightened instantly. "No," Elizabeth whispered. "No, no, no." Flick. Dark. The house fell into silence. Complete. Heavy. Elizabeth's breath came fast. Too fast. Her eyes locked on the window, on the place where the light should be, where the safety should be. Flick. The light came back. Dimmer. Weaker. Struggling. Something tapped the glass. Elizabeth flinched violently. Matthew shot to his feet. "Don't move," he said sharply. "Tap. Not a knock. Not like before. Softer. Slower. Intentional. Tap. Tap." Elizabeth's throat tightened. "It's different," she whispered. Matthew didn't take his eyes off the window. "I know." Tap. 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 A rhythm. Not random. Not frantic. Measured. Elizabeth swallowed hard. "It's not trying to get in." The realization slipped out before she could stop it. Matthew's expression darkened. "No," he said quietly. "It's not." Tap. Tap. Elizabeth's chest tightened. "Then what is it doing?" Silence. Then Grandma Mary spoke from behind them. Soft. Certain. "It is reminding you." Elizabeth turned slowly. "Of what?" Grandma met her eyes. "That it knows you looked." The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Elizabeth turned back toward the window. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, wide-eyed, terrified, and then something moved behind it. Elizabeth's breath caught. No, not outside. Inside, right behind her reflection. A shape, faint, distorted, too tall, too thin. Elizabeth spun around. Nothing. Her heart slammed against her ribs. No, no, and no. Matthew stepped closer. "What did you see?" "In the glass," she gasped. "It was behind me." Tap. They all froze. The sound didn't come from the window. It came from deeper in the house. Tap, tap, slow, measured, getting closer. Elizabeth's blood ran cold. "It's inside." Matthew shook his head instinctively. "No, it can't be." Tap, tap, tap. From the hallway now. Grandma didn't move, didn't panic, but her voice, when she spoke, carried something Elizabeth had never heard before. Fear. "The light," she said. It came back too late. Another step, another sound. Closer. Elizabeth backed away slowly, her body trembling. "That's not possible," she whispered. "We sent it back." "You showed it the way," Grandma said. The truth hit harder than anything else. Elizabeth's knees nearly gave out. "No." Tap. Right outside the living room now. Matthew grabbed Elizabeth's arm, pulling her behind him. "What do we do?" he demanded. Grandma's gaze locked on the dark hallway. Her voice steadied. Sharp again. Resolved. "You do not look at it." The tapping stopped. Silence. Then a breath. Not theirs. From the doorway. Elizabeth squeezed her eyes shut. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Her whole body screamed at her to look, to see, to understand. But she didn't, because now she knew better. The air shifted. That same awful presence from the bridge, from the road, from the night before, was right there, waiting, watching. A voice came next. Soft, broken, wrong. Elizabeth. Her breath shattered. It knew her name. Matthew's grip tightened on her arm. "Don't answer," he whispered. "Elizabeth." Closer now, right in front of them. Elizabeth clenched her jaw, shaking her head slightly. "I won't," she whispered back. Silence. Then a soft sound. Not tapping. Stepping. Past them. Elizabeth's breath hitched. It wasn't trying to take her. It wasn't grabbing her. It was leaving. The front door creaked open slowly. A rush of cool night air swept through the house. And then nothing. The presence lifted. Gone. The door swung shut with a soft click. Silence returned. Real silence. Elizabeth collapsed on the floor, her body finally giving out. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Her chest heaved. "Is it gone?" she whispered. No one answered, because no one knew. 3 months later, the apartment was small, quiet, safe, or at least it should have been. Elizabeth stood in her kitchen, staring at the wall as she waited for the microwave to beep. City noise hummed outside. Cars, voices, life, normal. She had left Texas, left the house, left the road, left the bridge. But some things don't stay where they belong. Tap. Elizabeth froze. Slowly, very slowly, she turned her head. The sound had come from the wall. Her wall, 3rd floor. No balcony, no ledge, nothing outside. Tap, tap. Her breath caught. The lights in the kitchen flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Elizabeth stared at the wall, heart pounding, hands shaking, and very quietly, like she already knew the answer, she whispered, "You found me." Tap. That's where tonight's story ends. But the strange doesn't disappear when the story's over. So keep your lights on, maybe don't look out the window. And I'll be right here when you're ready for the next one. Make sure you like and subscribe so you know when the next story is ready. This is Whispers in the Weird.